remember the story of Adam and Eve to some extent or another. Now remember, for the purpose of this video, it doesn't matter if you believe that the story is a literal one or a figurative one. That's for another video. The story goes as follows. When God created the earth, He planted a beautiful garden in the east called Eden. Here He planted all types of trees which are beautiful to look at, and right in the middle of the garden He put the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is where Adam lived. Now God made Eve, and she and Adam became one flesh. They were naked and unashamed. God said to them, "Eat from any tree you desire, they are all good for you," but had only one rule. Do not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, otherwise you will die. Then came along that clever serpent, and he says to Eve, "Did God really say you can't eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil?" And Eve replied, "We must not eat or touch it, or we shall die." And of course, the snake responds, "You will not die, but once you do eat, you will be like God and know good and evil." We all know what happened next. Eve eats from the fruit, gives some to Adam, who is with her. As soon as they do, they realize they were naked and ashamed. So they hid from God and covered themselves with leaves. Now God comes looking for them. He finds out what they did. He asks Adam, "What happened?" Adam blames Eve. Eve blames the snake. And so the snake is punished, Eve is punished, Adam is punished. They are banished from the garden. Now, because of their choice, we all eventually have a date with death. So what exactly does this have to do with Jesus? Well, remember Adam and Eve's solution to what they did? They covered themselves with leaves. That was their solution. But when they were banished from the garden, what were they wearing? Not leaves, but animal skins. Why? Because although it was a nice gesture on their part, God was saying the solution wasn't leaves. You see, ever since Adam and Eve, human beings have had a propensity towards legalism, and leaves represent every human's desire to have their version of a solution for death, the afterlife, and what we must do to secure ourselves in eternity. But God sent them out with animal skins because the solution was blood sacrifice. But whose blood? An animal's blood? Well, remember in the garden when God asked Adam what happened? Adam responded first, "The woman that you put here with me." You see, Adam was blaming God first and foremost. So God had a choice. Either erase everything He had created, or take responsibility and suffer the punishment Himself for their decisions. So God naturally comes to earth, gives Himself a body, and chooses to be the animal sacrifice He alluded to in the garden. Remember when John the Baptist first sees Him? John says, "Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world." But how exactly does He do that? Just by coming into the world and dying? You see, in the world today, we have all these trees that we think are good for us. These trees all represent our own human worldviews about death and the afterlife, and we think that if we eat any of them, that it will be good for us once we die. You see, in today's world, we have this new garden. And in the center of this new garden, we have this one good tree. But things are different now. Back in the garden, God said, "Do not eat of this one tree," and the serpent said, "You can eat of it." Today, God is saying, "Eat only of this one tree." And the world is saying, "Did He really say that? Maybe you can eat of any tree that exists." But what does it mean to eat? We can't cut Jesus up, fry Him up in a pan and eat Him. Rather, what God is saying is, I gave myself a body, came down and died, and physically rose from the dead. And if you believe this/eat this, you shall live forever again as it once was in the garden. The choice is ours, each and every one of us individually. There are many trees out there to consider, but take some time and consider who is most credible. If Jesus actually historically rose from the dead, then He is credible like no other. If not, then we are left with a smorgasbord of leaves to pick from that suit our own solutions. So, what's your choice? Will you eat from this new tree? If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe below.